Welcome to Working with Languages, the podcast for language speakers ready to explore the range of opportunities involving languages. My name is Sonja Kamschow. I'm a translator turned Google Ads specialist and a lifelong language enthusiast. Join me and my guests as we explore how they embraced languages in their careers and what working with languages looks like in the age of AI. Because finding the right inspiration can help you build or shift your career. Today's guest on Working with Languages is Hélène, who works in product management, shaping software products. I've been looking forward to talking to Hélène because of her multilingual and multicultural background, and also because I wanted to dive deeper into product management. This job type can feel a bit distant and very technical, but she gives us a good overview of what is behind it, the skills needed, and how languages and communication fit into the mix. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Working with Languages. My guest today is Hélène Sanchez, who works as a product manager in tech and has a very multilingual and multicultural background. First of all, hello, Hélène.
Hi, Sonja.
It's wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you for coming.
I'm very excited. I've never done this before, so I'm obviously a little bit anxious, but also super excited to be here.
Great. So as you know, I normally ask the same question to everyone at the beginning. What is your favorite word or phrase in a language that you speak?
So it's a bit of a weird one because it's taken from a poem of Giuseppe Ungaretti. And it's something that stuck with me while I was in secondary school, college, maybe. I don't know the translation in English, but it's this sentence that says, Licenzio all'azzurro, vertiginose Ave Maria. And it means I fire off an Ave Maria into the vertiginous blue sky. I just really love it. It's just stuck with me. I don't know why. So thanks to this opportunity, I looked into the meaning of it a little bit more. And it's basically this collage of words are fantastic and wonderful because you have this sort of balance or dichotomy between firing off something that is so ephemeral, like a prayer into the sky, which you can't really touch, but the way that is described with these a dizziness and having vertigos, it feels like, you can really touch it in a sense. And it's a representation of the beauty of languages, really. I'm sure there's poems that do the same in so many other languages. So I just think it's really fascinating to be able to work with these words, with words together and create these very contrasting effects.
I like that very much. And I also like, it's from a poem from an Italian writer. And it kind of also captures the fact that in Italy, kind of religion is everywhere. It's felt much more strongly. There's kind of churches everywhere and there's a cross with Jesus on it. Almost everywhere there's a little Madonna statue, when you go to little villages and so on. And there's a much more visible presence of the church kind of everywhere in Italy, much more than in the UK, for example. So whether you're religious or not, or whether you're very religious or only a little bit, it kind of reflects this idea that the church has it's just more prominent in Italy in a way. So you're originally from Italy. Can you tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and background?
Yes. So I'm actually half French, half Italian. Hence why my name is Hélène. And my surname is Spanish. But I was born in Italy, and my father is French and my mother is Italian, hence why the dual nationality. I did my primary and secondary school in Italy, and I did my bachelor's degree in philosophy in Italy, and then I moved to the UK just after that. It's been always in our family, being half French, half Italian, we spoke French and Italian all the time. Actually, we spoke French when my parents were angry at us, my sister and I. So they would tell us off in French. So you'd know that something was wrong because you were called off in French. And and then the rest, like, yes, was Italian. But we used to spend our summer holidays with my grandparents. So we'd go and stay a bit with my French grandparents and stay a bit with my Italian grandparents. And yes, that's how, like, it feels really weird to speak Italian to my French grandparents, although they've lived in Italy for like 45 years. So yeah, that's how I sort of like grew up in that sense.
Where does your Spanish surname come from? Is there a Spanish connection as well?
Yes, through many generations before me. So we're looking at the great grandparents of my grandparents. They would come from Spain and from the Basque region, and that's why through emigration they've ended up settling in Algeria, Oran, where my grandparents met. And when Algeria was France, and the civil war happened, so they had to escape, and they decided to move to Italy. At the time, obviously, they weren't welcome in France, and that's how they basically settled there. So I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately. My grandfather speaks Spanish and some words of Arabic as well, because they were born there, and my grandmother was a teacher in school. So he had to, like, she was teaching French, but obviously, like, she had to give some instructions, like, normally to all the families, to all the Algerian families that were sending their schools, their kids to my grandmother's school.
So very fascinating background, very international. And then after your bachelor in philosophy, you moved to the UK. I think you first moved to London. Is that right?
Yes. So I graduated in December, the 11th of December, I remember. And the 3rd of January was my birthday. And the 5th of January, I was already in London. I was like, I'm out of here. I don't know why, but I've decided to move to London. And Canonical, taking an English course, because at the time you had to have a specific qualification to be able to study in the UK. And that's what I've focused on, and I did at the beginning, because I was like, I don't know. I left without a return ticket because I thought, let's see. I was like, I don't know. I've always been 1 year earlier than everyone else at school, because I was born in January, so they decided to send me to school 1 year before the others. So I didn't feel really like the pressure of I've got to do something like this year. So it was good to understand, like, the education system in the UK, completely different from what we have in Italy, and also the cadence of, like, what you want to do. So I moved to London, and I was studying, meeting people, met friends. And after 6 months, I've applied to do masters. Got rejected in a few places, and then I got into the University of Edinburgh to do a master in management. So packed a van and I moved to Edinburgh, and I lived in Edinburgh for 4 years. So I did my masters there. I worked. It was great. I've traveled a bit through Scotland, and it's a beautiful country. And then after that, I moved briefly back to Italy for a few months. But it was great because I got a really interesting job in Italy that then allowed me to sort of, well, not specifically that job, but I always wanted to go back to the UK. It was just like I started like applying for jobs, and even that was like a huge learning curve. I applied for the BBC and I got an interview. So I've jumped on a plane at 7 a.m. in the morning, went to the BBC studios in central London, did my interview, and flew back on the same night, same day. And I remember what would have been my boss at the time, later, sorry. He said, "So where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Italy." "Right, but where do you live? In London?" "No, I live in Italy. I'm going back today." He said, "I don't think anyone has traveled so far for an interview in the entire life." So yeah, I got the job at the BBC, apparently.
That's amazing.
So yeah.
What was your job at the BBC?
At the BBC, I at the time I started as a delivery manager and scrum master.
What does that mean, actually?
Yes. So it means in software development in that period. Well, I've started to learn about this when I worked for the BBC. Is how you produce a software. So there's some agile methodologies, and there was a position specifically to work in a team that was developing products and facilitate and teach the team on how to be performing, and also making sure that things got done. Like the BBC had some like ways of working that perhaps were a bit antiquated, so they were trying to improve just the whole like system of developing products, getting feedback from users, just self-organizing around what needed to be done. And my job, so I worked on BBC iPlayer for 1 year, and I worked on the transition from BBC iPlayer Radio to BBC Sounds, what is now BBC Sounds. And I really loved it, to be honest. That's what got me into really wanting to be part of developing products, because my role at the BBC was more of a delivery manager, so delivery role. Whereas what I'm doing now is being in charge of what the product is. So taking decisions, responsibilities on what are we doing, why are we doing it. There's a lot of like storytelling and context that need to be passed on the team, so on the people that actually do the work. And in this case, because I work in tech, is about writing software, creating software.
In case someone doesn't know what product management is, when you talk about product, can you tell us a little bit more in very simple terms, what the product is and what product management actually is?
Sure. Product management is a role that has a lot of soft skills. We, as product manager, you don't do any of the executive work. So I have a team of developers, designers, testers, and they build. I create context and the story of what something needs to be done and why we're doing it. So I need to understand if there's a gap in the market. I need to understand what that gap is, what is the user base, what is our total addressable market, why do we need this product. I need to think about a go-to-market strategy. I'm responsible for the team. So it's like being an entrepreneur, right? So you've got an idea, or you've got a problem that you want to solve, that you need to solve. Perhaps is a mandate from the business, and you tap into all the resources that you have to solve that problem. So it's a bit of there isn't like one definition, I would say, about what a product manager does or is. It really depends on the company and the context, but it's about being a problem solver, is about empathizing with your users, with with an opportunity that you see, is empathizing with your team, because obviously you have to have a team. And it's about really like loving these waves, that it's about loving an opportunity and seeing a process from start to end and enabling that process and those people to be successful.
That sounds really interesting, but also very wide-ranging. So you developed a technology product, a software or something similar. And then you also have a lot of teams and stakeholders that you communicate with, a lot of responsibility and also a lot of sort of touch points and people to talk to. So would you say it sounds like a very technical and a role full of responsibility because you produce a software or a different technology product and you deal with a lot of teams, different kind of teams and a lot of people and a lot of stakeholders. So what would you say the skills are that you need to be a successful product manager?
Patience, ability to listen without judgment, definitely emotional intelligence, those soft skills that I think are becoming even more important now that we have like AI tools that do all the executive work in a sense. And it's about negotiation. It definitely is about negotiation. It's about empowering the success of and the strength, well, empowering other people to be the best they can because they are actually building things. And never get tired to repeat the same story all over again to different audiences so that you can create alignment, so that there are no surprises or there are very little surprises when things get out in the wild and they reach millions of users, for instance. I guess because I work in technology, that like the kind of impact and the relationships and the stakeholders I deal with may be perhaps different if you're developing a concrete, so a physical product. Okay, a physical product, it might be a bit different, but the sort of like fil rouge is this, is being able to be the glue between different groups, between different stakeholders. They will all, everyone will have their own agenda, and you need to be excellent at aligning all these agendas together and make your audience, your stakeholders see why it's important that we're all on the same page about something. I know it may sound like wishy-washy, but really, these are like life skills, really. And in a sense, people need direction. Like they really need the direction. Not a lot of people are proactive, and they're not the best judge of themselves as well. So one of the aspects of being a good product manager is also not being afraid of having difficult conversations, of operating in the unknown where you don't have all the answers at all. And you will never have them. But some people you work with need all the answers or need to be certain about a lot of things. And there's that kind of like nurturing that needs to be done to build trust.
I understand you work for a British and French company, or at least you have offices in the UK and in France. Do you get to travel a lot and you get to use your languages? I mean, I guess your working language is English, but you get to speak other languages as well. Or how do you use your language skills and communication skills?
I actually, this particular role and company that I'm at the moment made me use my languages a lot more than I thought. So my role has changed a little bit because of a pivoting that the company has done. But I started a year ago with the mission of helping the acquisition of a French company. So there's an English company, is the mother company that has acquired businesses in France, in Portugal, and this particular French company has been acquired, but always felt quite like distant in a sense from a product perspective as well. So the objective was, how do you take a company, a product that has lived as a standalone entity, and you integrate it in the context of where this is going to be sold as as a capability of a platform rather than just like a standalone product. And this was like what was written on paper. However, what they really needed was what I started doing was being that cultural bridge between the French office and the rest of the stakeholders in England, because they never really communicated. And also, let's remember that French is a beautiful language, but it's quite hard to learn. English is the language that everyone speaks and should speak. There's not many people in France that speak English to a standard level. So there's been a lot of translation. There's been a lot of kind of like listening to one side, translating the complexity into translating a message from one culture to another. And it's not just about, it was literally about how do we work together? Like how do we make sure that what we see in the French market is heard and understood, and how do we cater for that with the tools and with the product suite that the mother company has. So finding how to align what we were building that could serve two different markets.
I find it really interesting because the role that you have as a product manager, I understand, did not require any languages, but then the fact that you spoke not only English, but also French has actually turned into an advantage. So something that, was an add-on that you offered to your employer was clearly an advantage, and it probably put you in a very favorable position within the company.
Yeah. I didn't realize at the time, because obviously I applied as a product manager. There's this opportunity on how to solve this like market gap, and then I've acquired skills that I didn't even know I had, to be honest. So it's been really eye-opening to literally be that bridge and to create like an integration between two different worlds, really.
Yes, that's wonderful. That is all that I really wanted to ask you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
There is one thing, yes, which actually having the opportunity to use languages at work made me realize, first of all, that speaking different languages is a skill. I've always thought I'm taking this for granted because I grew up like this, because I grew up being able to switch mental model in a millisecond. You are a different person when you speak a language. Your character changes. The way you move your tongue, where your saliva goes. It is fascinating. And I love etymology. I get so much satisfaction understanding like why something is called that way. And it reminds me that we use words to create a reality. It's not that like we interpret the world through the language that we speak. So speaking different languages is like you're seeing context and situations in different ways. And I think we're really fortunate that we can do this. And it's speaking different languages whenever you bump into someone or, oh, how many languages did you speak? Oh, I speak this and this. Wow, you're so lucky. Yes, we are. Like, we are really, really lucky. So just an acknowledgement of by taking, by it's just, it's really good.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that we change in a way when we speak a different language, because we consciously or unconsciously, we adapt to the culture of that language. But I also think it allows us to think in a broader context and to understand nuances better and to understand different people better. And that just makes us really good communicators. And I think that's definitely an advantage both in our private lives and at work. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming. It's been a great conversation.
Yes, thank you so much, Sonia.
What strikes me about this conversation is that Hélène focused on her technical skills to progress her career. But languages turned out to be an additional skill that placed her in a favorable position, after her British employer merged with a French company. She was able to help build bridges thanks to her French language, cultural awareness, and her communication. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. And if you think a friend might be interested, do share this episode or the podcast with them. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in the show notes.